Hello, hello. It is time for more reductive carving. This time I will be doing a representational object and I will be carving it out of plaster. So I always like to start students out with soap so that it gives them an opportunity to see into a form in something that's relatively soft and relatively cheap as well, because it's a different way of learning and sort of thinking. So always good to warm up. If you haven't done any carving ever or in a while, start out with the soap again. Ivory soap is a great place to start. The next material that I like to introduce students to then is plaster. And the reason that I like to have students work with plaster is because it also is a fairly inexpensive material to carve. It doesn't have a lot of toxicity associated with it in terms of dust hazards or other health hazards. So it's a fairly safe material to work with. It's also softer than many other materials, so you can still get away with carving and learning about reductive carving with still kind of minimal buy-in. Because once you start carving stone or getting into wood, you need your chisels and all kinds of other things. So plaster is a really great material for those reasons. A couple of the tools that I have available that I like to work with, again, just sort of these really basic ones. I really love these rasps. They're kind of like cheese graters. These come in a variety of shapes and sizes. This happens to be my favorite for hand holding. These knives here can be found in the drywall section at your hardware store, but the thing that I love about them in particular for plaster is they have like a really gnarly set of serrated edge teeth, so that it helps me cut through the plaster fairly quickly. And then a few other basic things I have some clay loop tools, so these can work okay. It will dull these out, pretty fast. So if you are a potter, you might want a separate set for your clay and a separate set for your plaster. I have a needle tool, and then I usually have just some kind of a little sharp kind of little pick. In addition, I love green Scotch-Brite scrubbies and metal serrated edge ribs. So these have little tiny teeth on them, which also help dig into the plaster. If you have a butter knife that has serrated edge teeth, or a steak knife that's not like crazy sharp, that also could work really great for carving away at the form if you don't have some of these other materials. But again, that would just become a studio tool. It wouldn't be something then that you would put back in the kitchen. Okay, so the plaster that I'm using here was left over from a demo I had done of an alginate hand casting. And I'm usually always really bad at judging the ratios of how much plaster to mix, although it can be measured. So I often like to just have extra that I pour into another form. In this case, it was a milk container. And then I have a block of plaster when I'm ready to carve. Now, this has been in a plastic bag for a couple days. I wouldn't really want to store it in here for weeks before I started carving it, but I do like my blocks of plaster to have a little moisture in them when I start carving, because if they're a little softer, you can get through them faster, but it also helps eliminate the dust. So in the first week that I'm carving or working on something, I probably would suggest just keeping it in a plastic bag in between your working sessions for that reason. So the other thing just to kind of point out about cleanup with your plaster is it's not a bad idea to take like a little sheet of plastic and lay it down on your work surface. I have this little cardboard tray that I made, but you could cut a box and have a little tray. You could line that with plastic or newspaper or anything else that helps to make cleanup a lot faster for you, because you will be generating a lot of plaster shavings just through this process.